I pulled into the driveway of the house I had shared with Ethan for the past 5 years, my heart racing with excitement. It was our anniversary, and I had a wonderful surprise planned for my husband. Taking the day off from my marketing job, I decided to come home early and cook his favorite meal. A candlelit dinner, maybe some wine, and definitely an evening of romance. As I got out of the car, I noticed Ethan's truck was the only vehicle in the driveway. That's odd, I thought. Lila's car should be here too, since she was the home nurse we hired after Ethan's back injury. Grabbing the anniversary gift from the passenger seat, I hurried up the front steps, unable to stop smiling in anticipation of Ethan's reaction. I opened the door and stopped dead in my tracks. The living room was empty, but I could hear faint noises coming from our bedroom down the hall. Setting the gift down, I crept forward, the sounds becoming clearer. It was the unmistakable rhythmic creaking of our bed, accompanied by gasps and moans of pleasure. My heart pounded so loudly I was sure whoever was in there could hear it. Anger and dread flooded my veins as I threw open the bedroom door. There was Ethan, my husband of 5 years, thrusting furiously into the very nurse who was supposed to be caring for him, Lila. The same Lila I had welcomed into our home, who I had cooked meals for, who I had politely made small talk with when she arrived each morning. "Zara!" Ethan yelped, his face flushing beet red as he scrambled to cover himself with the crumpled sheets. Lila simply stared at me, her expression a mixture of shock and what looked like satisfaction, as if she had been hoping to get caught all along by the wife she had so greatly betrayed. "How could you?" I stammered at Ethan, my vision blurring with tears. "After everything we've been through, how could you do this to me?" He opened his mouth, but I cut him off, wheeling on Lila. "And you manipulative little whore, get your things and get out of my house immediately." Lila didn't flinch, just smirked as she slid off the bed, completely unbothered by her nudity. "Zara, I'm so sorry you had to find out this way. Ethan and I, well, we just have something special." "Special?" I spat. "Is that what you call sleeping with a married man, while being paid to take care of him?" "Don't be so dramatic," Lila purred, grabbing her clothes from the floor. "Maybe if you took better care of your husband, he wouldn't have needed to look elsewhere for companionship." Before I could respond, Ethan spoke up. "Enough. Both of you just stop." He looked at me pleadingly. "Zara, baby, I never meant to hurt you. It's just, Lila and I have a connection, an undeniable spark. But I still love you, I swear." I stared at him in disbelief for a long moment. Then, straightening my back, I spoke in a tone as cold and hard as steel. "Love me? You don't know the meaning of the word, Ethan. As of this moment, our marriage is over. I'll be speaking to a lawyer first thing tomorrow about divorcing your unfaithful ass." I turned on my heel and stormed out, grabbing the discarded anniversary gift on my way. In that moment, shock and sorrow were swiftly giving way to something more volatile, a burning sense of rage and the burning desire for revenge. For the next few days after discovering Ethan's betrayal, I maintained an icy demeanor around him while secretly plotting my next moves. Divorce was inevitable, but I wanted more than just to dissolve our marriage. I craved vengeance against him and that home-wrecking nurse. My first order of business was gathering information on Lila. I didn't know much about her background or history, so I started digging online, scouring social media and public records. What I found was troubling, to say the least. Lila had a long trail of disgruntled former patients and employers claiming she had stolen valuables or money from them. There were even a few allegations of her seducing vulnerable older men to get access to their bank accounts. A true Black Widow if I'd ever seen one. Armed with this knowledge, I decided to bring in reinforcements, someone who could aid in digging up real evidence against Lila. One night over dinner, I dropped a bombshell on my oldest friend Max. "I need you to help me take down that manipulative bitch, Lila," I said bluntly. "Officially, I mean, with your badge and access to records." Max was a detective with the local police department. We had been close ever since we were kids riding bikes around this very same town. His eyes widened at my request. "Whoa, Zara, slow down. You know I can't just abuse my authority for a personal vendetta against your husband's mistress." "It's not just about revenge, Max," I pressed. "Look at what I found on her." I slid the paper with my research across the table. She's a con artist, someone who preys on the vulnerable. You can't tell me you'd feel right letting a snake like that keep slithering around our community." He scanned the information, a frown creasing his brow. Damn, I knew there was something off about that woman. He looked back up at me. "But if I open an official investigation, I'll need rock-solid evidence. Anything you can get, recordings, emails, anything that shows her true motives." I nodded firmly. "Don't worry, I've got a plan for that. Just be ready to mobilize when I give the signal." Over the next few weeks, I carefully set the stage, making sure Ethan and Lila thought they were in the clear. Meanwhile, I was covertly recording their conversations, documenting proof of their affair, as well as any hints about Lila's bigger agenda. One particularly damning recording was when I caught Lila taunting Ethan about getting access to my family's inherited property, a large plot of land my late parents had owned. "Once that naive little wife signs everything over, we'll be set for life, babe," Lila had purred in that sickly sweet tone of hers. Ethan sounded reluctant. "I don't know. Maybe we're going too far with this whole con. Zara's not as gullible as you think." "Oh, please, I have you twisted so tightly around my finger, she'll never see it coming. Not until it's way too late." I felt my blood boiling listening to her arrogant, malicious words. She had no idea what storm was coming her way. Gripping the recorder tightly, I made up my mind. It was time to set the trap and bring down Lila and my deceitful husband once and for all. No more playing nice. They wanted to see how far they could scheme. I would show them just how merciless my retribution could be. True to his word, Max was fully on board once I presented him with the incriminating recordings of Lila and Ethan's scheming. As a cop, his hatred for con artists and manipulators ran deep. "This is some cold-blooded stuff," he said, shaking his head after listening to the audio files. "Lila's one twisted sister, that's for sure. And your dirtbag husband is just as bad for falling for her mind games." I nodded grimly. "Exactly. That's why we need to take them down, by any means necessary. They can't be allowed to keep preying on innocent people like this." "You know this is going to get ugly, though, right?" Max gave me a serious look. "Like potential jail time ugly if we can prove criminal intent." Meeting his gaze steadily, I replied, "I'm prepared for that. They're the ones who should pay for their actions, not me. I just want justice, and a little karma payback on the side." Max managed a small smile at that. "Fair enough. Let's start digging into this Lila chick's past, then. I'll put in some calls to my contacts in other districts where she used to work." Over the next few days, the two of us built a damning profile on Lila Thompson's twisted history. Seemingly changing her name and hair color frequently to avoid detection, she left a trail of scammed elderly patients and boyfriends from California to New York. Exploiting her youthful beauty and innocent looks, Lila would seduce lonely older men with money, letting them fall hopelessly in love before slowly draining their assets. Classic Black Widow behavior. When that avenue didn't work, she would get hired on as a private nurse through exclusive staffing agencies, once again working her wiles to siphon cash and possessions from her frail charges. "This woman is a complete sociopath," Max said with disgust after reading through her rap sheet. "She doesn't care who she hurts, as long as she gets paid in the end." I clenched my fists, struggling to contain my rage. "Well, it all ends now. We've got more than enough proof to put her away, thanks to those recordings." Ethan was the one wild card. Would he fold like a coward and cut a deal to save himself, or was he in on Lila's long con from the start? When Max and I paid a little surprise visit to the house the next day, we got our answer. Ethan was there alone, drinking a beer and looking utterly miserable. "Where's your little girlfriend?" I asked coldly. He stared at me for a long moment, then sighed. "She took off last night. Once she realized you were really leaving and not playing around, she grabbed her stuff and bolted." "So she just used you and left you high and dry? How does it feel to get conned, Ethan?" Something shifted in his eyes. "You were right, Zara. I was a damn fool to fall for her lies and manipulation. She had me under her spell from the start. I never should have betrayed you in our marriage like that." I almost felt an ounce of pity for him. Almost. "Save it," I snapped. "It's too late for apologizes. You're just as guilty as Lila for going along with her plans to scam me out of my inheritance, my family home." Pulling out my phone, I hit play on one of the recordings. letting the audio of their scheming voices fill the room. Ethan's face drained of color. "Where did you get that?" "I have a whole lot more where that came from," Max spoke up gruffly. "More than enough to put both you and your con artist girlfriend away for a long time on criminal charges." I stared at Ethan, gauging his reaction. "So what's it going to be?" "You can take the charges, or you can get the hell out of my life forever and skip town. Your choice." His shoulders slumped in defeat. For once, Ethan made the wise call and chose option 2, cutting his losses and running from the consequences of his actions. I simply watched, unmoved, as he packed a bag and left, getting into his truck and driving off without a backwards glance. Max put a hand on my shoulder. "You did the right thing, letting him go. Jail probably would have been letting him off easy after what he pulled." I was quiet for a moment, staring at the vacant driveway. I just want to move on and put this whole nightmare behind me. Maybe then I can finally have some peace. As I would soon realize, finding true peace would be easier said than done. The storm clouds were just beginning to part, but the aftermath was more complicated than I ever could have predicted. With both Lila and Ethan gone from my life, I should have felt a huge weight lifted off my shoulders. Instead, I found myself growing more tense and uneasy by the day. It started small. Calls from creditors about missed payments on loans and credit cards I didn't even know Ethan had opened. Then notices arrived about unpaid taxes on some rental properties he owned. Needless to say, I was baffled. When I finally got Ethan on the phone to demand answers, his voice was laced with panic. "Zara, listen, I've really screwed up here. I got in way over my head with some debts and bad investments." "How bad are we talking?" I asked warily. There was a pause before he responded. 6 figures, maybe more." I couldn't control the startled gasp that escaped me. "Are you freaking kidding me right now? Jesus, Ethan, how could you let things spiral that out of control?" I know, he said miserably. "It started small, just placing a few bets here and there to try and make some extra cash on the side. But then I got addicted to the rush of it. The more I lost, the more I had to keep betting to try and dig myself out of the hole." My mind was reeling trying to process this. My husband, my supposedly loving, devoted husband, had developed a dangerous gambling addiction and buried us in crippling debt because of it. "Does it have anything to do with why you've been so eager to sell my parents' land?" I asked slowly, pieces starting to fall into place. "Yes. God, Zara, I'm so sorry, but I need to cash out on that property as soon as possible. Between the debts I raked up and the money I already embezzled from my work accounts, we're going to lose everything if I don't pay it all back right away." White-hot rage lanced through me at his words. He had stolen from his own job, jeopardized both of our entire livelihoods and financial futures due to his reckless vices, all while lying and cheating right under my nose. "You selfish, pathetic bastard," I spat out venomously. "Did you ever even love me at all? Or was I just another one of your marks, like Lila tried making me into?" "No, baby, no." Ethan cried out desperately. "I do love you, I swear. I've just made some incredibly stupid, self-destructive mistakes that spun way out of control before I knew what was happening. Please, you have to believe me." I was seething, seconds away from erupting with every blistering insult and accusation I could hurl at him. But then I paused, taking a deep breath to rein in my scorching temper. "You know what?" I said, doing my best to keep my tone even and measured. "I don't have to believe a damn thing coming out of your lying mouth anymore. Not after the stunt you pulled with Lila behind my back." "Zara," I cut him off coldly. "But here's what is going to happen. You're going to give me every single detail about these debts of yours, accounts, balances, everything. And then you're going to immediately quit your job and direct deposit every last penny to pay them off." "I can't just quit," he protested. "How will I afford to make payments?" "Figure it out," I replied bluntly. "Once we're square, I'll help you get into rehabilitation for your gambling sickness. But not a second sooner until you've cleaned up your gigantic mess and shown me you're serious about changing." There was a heavy pause before he responded in a subdued tone. "You're right. I deserve that and more after what I did. I'll get you the details on everything tonight. Just please, don't completely give up on me, Zara. I need your help to get through this nightmare I created." I didn't reply, simply hanging up and staring at the phone for a long moment. Part of me wanted to abandon Ethan to the hell of his own making, but another part, the part that still foolishly clung to the remaining shreds of the man I once loved, knew I had to at least try to help him recover. If not for his sake, then for my own peace of mind in knowing I had given our relationship one last shot at redemption before washing my hands of it completely. The game was far from over. Ethan's secrets and lies had merely opened up a new, even more tumultuous chapter. True to his word, Ethan provided me with a full accounting of the staggering debts he had accrued, nearly $500,000 gambled away through high-stakes betting and unwise investments. My head spun just looking at the dizzying array of balances, interest rates, and delinquency notices. We met up a few days later at a quiet cafe to discuss a plan for paying it all off. Ethan looked like a hollow shell of himself, haggard and despondent. "I quit my job already," he said in a monotone voice. "Cashed out what little was left in savings and investments to make a dent." I gave a stiff nod, sliding a stack of papers across the table. "These are all the details on my parents' land holding. Highly valued property, zoned for commercial development. If we sell it, that should cover the remaining debt completely." Ethan quickly flipped through the documents, his eyes widening. "Zara, this is easily worth over $1 million if marketed right. We could not just pay everything off, but actually walk away with a decent nest egg." "Don't get ahead of yourself," I said flatly. "This isn't about making a profit. It's about eliminating the massive hole you dug for us. Every single penny gets funneled directly into paying creditors until the last debt is cleared. Understood?" He shrank a bit under my withering glare. "Yeah, no, I got it. Debts get paid first, nothing else." Ethan paused, then looked at me imploringly. "Still, even after that, maybe we could use what's left to, start over? Give our relationship another real shot." I stared at him in disbelief. Even after everything, the cheating, the lies, the addictive gambling that nearly bankrupted us, he still harbored delusional hopes of reconciling. My lip curled with disgust. "Let's get one thing crystal clear," I said icily. "The only reason I'm entertaining any of this is to clean up your gigantic mess and preserve whatever small shred of respect I have left for you as the father of my child." Ethan blinked in surprise. "Wait, you're pregnant? Why didn't you tell me?" "Oh, I'm sorry. I must have missed that important life update while I was a little preoccupied dealing with my husband's rampant infidelity," I snapped, unable to contain the white-hot surge of anger any longer. "Did you think for 1 second about how your despicable actions could impact an innocent baby? Or were you too busy blowing our hard-earned money chasing your next cheap thrill?" Cowering under my verbal onslaught, Ethan opened and closed his mouth uselessly. For once, the smooth-talking cheat had no glib excuses or placating words to deflect my justifiable wrath. Pressing my advantage, I leaned across the table and hissed, "Newsflash, Ethan, you are done taking me for granted and jeopardizing my future. From here on out, you dance to my tune and meet every single demand I make regarding these debts, this divorce, and being there to support your child. One misstep, and I will bury you in legal hell so deep you'll be eating court summonses for breakfast." For a long moment, a tense silence stretched between us, the air thick with smoldering tension. Part of me felt a savage sense of satisfaction, seeing the man who had so callously crushed my heart and trust now utterly cowed before me. Finally, Ethan spoke in a small, defeated voice. "You're right. You're absolutely right. I have no excuses for how completely I failed you as a husband and soon-to-be father. If doing everything you ask is what it takes to start making amends, then you have my word." I eyed him skeptically. "Your word means less than nothing these days. Actions are what I'll be watching for from now on." With that parting shot, I grabbed my things and started to rise from the table. But Ethan stopped me with one last plaintive question. "Zara, do you think you could ever find it in your heart to forgive me for all of this?" I paused, letting his words hang in the air for a long moment as I studied his sorrowful expression. Then a bit of the icy barrier around my heart cracked as a surprising pang of pity washed over me. "I don't know," I answered honestly. "But I do know one thing. If there's even a chance at redemption for what you've done, you'll have to fight like hell to earn it. Starting right now." With that, I turned and walked out of the cafe, leaving Ethan to wrestle with the weight of his sins alone, as I steeled myself for the uphill battle yet to come. With Ethan's mountain of debt finally laid bare, I realized I needed to take drastic action, and quickly, before he gambled away what little we had left. Selling my parents' land was the obvious solution, but leaving that transaction up to Ethan's poor decision-making seemed like a recipe for disaster. No, if I wanted to ensure we dug ourselves out of this catastrophic hole he created, I would need to regain full control and outmaneuver him at his own game of deception. It was time to set the perfect trap. I started by reaching out to some former colleagues in commercial real estate development. With my marketing expertise, I managed to fabricate an incredibly lucrative offer for the land from a fake property investment firm, complete with contracts, prospectus materials, and other convincing lures. Next, I not so subtly planted the idea in Ethan's head that this was our potential ticket to finally getting out from under the debt for good. "Can you imagine?" I said wistfully one evening, as he pored over the latest delinquency letters. "If we played our cards right and landed a deal like that Tennessee project you showed me, we could walk away with millions." Ethan's eyes lit up with undisguised greed at the prospect. Yeah, that could really be our way out of this mess. No more sleepless nights, no more looking over our shoulders. Nodding, I added flatly, "Of course, it would mean kissing your dreams of developing that land goodbye. You'd have to be okay giving up that long-term income stream." I could see the indecision flashing across his face as he weighed his lingering covetousness of the property against the crushing pressures of his current reckoning. Finally, his shoulders sagged. "You're right. At this point, I just have to take what I can get to pay off the debts and start over clean. No more picking at old scabs." Inwardly, I smirked. He had taken the bait, just as I knew his desperation and inability to see any long game would compel him to do. Now it was time to reel him in further. Over the next few days, I laid out a trail of breadcrumbs, emails from my contacts about the offer, profits projections estimating our cut after debt repayment, and even a contract nearly ready to be signed pending final inspection of the property. Ethan grew more and more enthusiastic about the prospects with each new detail I provided. I could practically see the wheels turning as he dreamed about all the riches to be had. "Enough to get us back on our feet and buy us a fresh start somewhere new," he declared eagerly, trying to win my favor. "You, me, and the baby can leave all this ugliness behind and start fresh." I gave a simple nod of acknowledgement, keeping my expression neutral. Part of me felt a pang of sadness that it had come to this, not only demolishing any potential reconciliation by resorting to trickery myself, but also preparing to strip Ethan of the very same devastating false hopes he had lured me into with Lila. But my sympathy was short-lived. He had declared war on our marriage bed the moment he gave in to temptation and brought that succubus into our lives. Now he would reap the very whirlwind he had arrogantly sown, facing the harsh reality that betrayal only breeds further deception in return. The pieces were all in place for the final stroke. I fed Ethan one last tantalizing lead, an urgent email requesting that we meet the prospective buyers at our property first thing tomorrow morning to inspect it and finalize the deal. "This is it," he crowed jubilantly when I showed him the message. "Our reckoning day, once and for all. We're going to walk out of there millionaires and leave this nightmare behind for good." I refrained from responding, simply rising and leaving the room to prepare for the upcoming confrontation. Ethan remained absorbed in his gleeful scheming, blithely unaware of just how rude his own personal judgment day would soon prove to be. Tomorrow, both he and the vindictive specter of Leela's betrayal would finally be fully expunged from my life. Poetic justice would be served, no matter how unpleasant the means to that end. As the old saying goes, those who fail to learn from the past are doomed to repeat it, and Ethan was about to suffer that karmic lesson firsthand. The next morning, I awoke before dawn and spent a tense couple of hours meticulously preparing for the biggest confrontation of my life. I gathered all the documentation, recordings, and evidence I had amassed of Ethan's duplicity, a veritable paper trail that would ultimately become his undoing. Around 8 a.m., I got the text from Max saying he was in position on the property with a couple of other plainclothed officers, ready and waiting. Taking a steadying breath, I gave Ethan a shake to wake him up. "Hey, rise and shine," I said in a carefully controlled tone. "Big day, remember? We have that meeting with the buyers at the property in an hour." Ethan's eyes fluttered open, then grew wide as the realization hit him. "Oh shit, you're right!" He bounded out of bed and hurriedly threw on some clothes. "I'll grab a quick shower, then we can head over to secure this deal once and for all." I watched impassively as he scurried around, noting how convincingly hope and anticipation had taken hold in his demeanor. Despite everything, some infinitesimal part of me felt the faintest tug of regret for having to crush that fragile optimism so ruthlessly. But the moment quickly passed as my focus resharpened on the greater need for catharsis and finality, not just for Ethan's avalanche of transgressions, but for every ounce of turmoil Lila and her influence had brought into my life over these brutal past months. The damage had been done. There could be no half measures or hollow make-amends when it came to delivering the harsh judgment they had earned. An hour later, I pulled my car through the gates of my parents' old property as Ethan guided me toward one of the large clearings where the buyers were supposedly waiting to meet us. "This is really happening," he murmured almost reverently, eyes alight with avaricious visions of grandeur. "After everything, we're going to come out on top and wipe that entire slate clean." I didn't respond, merely cut the engine and stepped out of the vehicle with my briefcase of evidence in hand. A lump formed in my throat as memories of playing on these very lands as a youngster came flooding back, but I shoved them aside. This place would forever be a monument to my shattered dreams and disillusionment. Allowing it to pass into new, untainted hands was the only way to fully exorcise the ghosts it now contained. "Hey, babe, where are these guys?" Ethan asked, glancing around the empty clearing with a slight frown. "I don't see any other cars." "That's because there are no buyers, Ethan," came a gruff voice. We both started as Max stepped out from behind a clump of trees with two other stone-faced officers in tow. Just us, and a whole lot of questions that need answering. Ethan's mouth dropped open in shock and confusion as I stepped forward, holding up a mini recorder. "You're right, this party is just for us," I said coolly. "But these guests have been attending for quite a while now, haven't they?" With a flick of my thumb, I played back a series of audio clips. Ethan's panicked admissions of his gambling sickness and siphoning money from work, Lila's callous taunts about bleeding me dry for the property, even discussions of how he would coerce me into selling once the debts became unmanageable. "No, how did you?" Ethan stammered, his face drained of color. "Did you really think I wouldn't catch on eventually?" I asked with biting condescension. "That I would just play the fool and let you sabotage my entire life for your twisted desires and depravity?" This is entrapment," he sputtered helplessly. "No, it's justice. Justice you've had coming for a long damn time," Max interjected, stepping forward to loom over Ethan threateningly. "We've got more than enough evidence here of fraud, extortion, misappropriation of funds, you name it. Your ass is going away for a long time unless you play ball." Ethan's eyes flickered wildly between Max and I, finally seeming to grasp just how dire his situation had become. "What do you want?" he asked hoarsely. A vindicated smirk tugged at the corners of my mouth as I approached him. Gone was any of the lingering pity I'd felt, only the cold, resolute satisfaction of having outmaneuvered him so thoroughly at last. "It's quite simple," I said in a tone of forced lightness that felt like sandpaper against my throat. "You take that little backstabbing trollop, Lila, and get the hell out of my life. Get out of this town, this state, this entire part of the country for all I care." Pausing, I allowed the implacable severity of my words to hang in the air for a long moment before delivering the final blow. "Start running and don't ever stop, because if I so much as get an inkling that you're still lurking around trying to slither your way back in, I'll bury you under the federal prison system so deep you'll never see daylight again." A heavy silence fell over the clearing as the impact of my ultimatum sank in. For a beat, it looked like Ethan might try to protest further, his jaw clenching mulishly. But finally, the veil of bravado seemed to slip away and his shoulders slumped in utter defeat. Mutely, he gave a small nod of capitulation. I didn't let my stoic mask drop, didn't reveal the maelstrom of emotions roiling within me as I watched the man I had once loved shuffle away like a broken husk of himself. Only when his retreating form had disappeared into the tree line did I allow myself to exhale a shuddering breath that carried the weight of months of anguish and rage and betrayal. The tribulations were at an end, but the long road toward healing was just beginning. Rest, however, was the furthest thing from my mind. I was a woman reborn with clarity and determination. While Ethan and Lila fled from the righteous flames of my retribution, it was time for me to rise from the ashes stronger than ever before. After all, in the immortal words of that old proverb, what is kept in the darkness eventually comes to light. And the brilliant dawn of my own personal renaissance was finally breaking through the storm clouds at last. In the weeks following my brutal reckoning with Ethan, I operated with a renewed sense of vigor and determination. My first order of business was ensuring every last penny of his ill-gotten gambling debts got paid off in full. I liquidated his investment accounts, cashed out retirement funds, even sold off that expensive sports car he always prized so much, anything that could be leveraged into clearing those balances. Part of me relished watching his vain trappings of greed stripped away one by one. With Ethan officially out of the picture, the property sale then went through without a hitch, netting me a massive windfall profit, enough to pay off the debts with plenty left over to afford turning the page on this sordid chapter for good. Rather than simply pocket that surplus for myself, however, I found a small sense of catharsis in putting it toward a greater good of sorts. I donated a sizable portion to addiction treatment and counseling programs focused specifically on rehabilitating gambling addicts. Maybe this money can help others avoid the destructive path Ethan spiraled down, I told the program director, handing over the check. At this point, that's the best form of redemption I can hope for from this whole mess. The director smiled kindly, placing a hand over mine. You've already helped create a powerful resource for healing and preventing further personal tragedies. That's an incredible gift to give others after enduring such a deep betrayal yourself. I forced a tight smile in return, appreciative yet guarded against letting my resurrected emotional armor down too easily. While Ethan may have represented the immediacy of my trials, his mere exit from my world hardly marked the end of my inner turmoils. The scars of that treacherous period would linger no matter how much salve I tried applying. At the very least, this program funding was a step toward wringing some sliver of meaning and positivity from my acute suffering. A way to transform my pain into something that could aid others from falling victim to those same self-destructive vices. With that cleansing act put in motion, it was finally time to turn my sights fully forward toward putting the shattered pieces of my life back together, hammer by metaphorical nail. Beginning with those plans I had loosely floated before my world got turned upside down, renovating and repurposing my family's old property here in town into a community center focused on providing after-school programs for underprivileged kids. I knew my parents, rest their souls, would have approved wholeheartedly. The land had been in our family for generations, and preserving it as a beacon of hope and uplift for the community resonated perfectly with the values they had instilled in me from birth. No more allowing the sprawling acreage to become a monument to Ethan's greed and treachery. The dilapidated manor house and grounds would be transformed into a vibrant cornerstone of community empowerment and belonging. A place to let young people realize their potential in a supportive, nurturing environment, something too many wayward souls like Ethan never got the chance to experience in their own troubled upbringings. Perhaps that same lack of moral fortitude and direction was what made him susceptible to those ruinous vices. Not that I could ever fully absolve him of personal accountability. But part of moving forward was rejecting the kind of black and white thinking that casts all transgressors as irredeemable villains. Change and redemption had to be allowed to take root somewhere, in somebody. Maybe my mission would be fostering those seeds in a new generation of kids at risk of getting swallowed by that same toxic cycle of destructive impulses. Maybe nurturing in them the inner light that Ethan, and even Lila for that matter, had allowed to be utterly extinguished in themselves. I dismissed the wistful pondering, shaking my head slightly. Now was not the time to dwell on the what-ifs or lost souls causes of my tormentors. There would be ample opportunities down the road to wrestle with the twin specters of forgiveness and accountability. For now, I needed to laser in on tangible actions with tangible benefits. Impacts that could be quantified in smiles and changed lives, not unresolvable philosophical quandaries. Striding across the property, I swept my gaze over the crumbling structures and overgrown landscaping, mentally picturing how it would all look refreshed and revitalized. A sanctuary of community and hope rising from the ashes of despair and betrayal. It was a worthy vision to pour my energy and passion into as this newest chapter unfolded. No more would I be shackled by the baggage of the past, the days and months of tasting the bitter draughts of anguish and injustice. My cup would run over with the pursuit of accountability and restoration, a chance to face the future unshackled from the cycles of hurt and deception that had robbed me of so much already. Perseverance. Thy name is Zara.